Oh, I can choose.
And I get to hit continue so that we're moving. Thank you all very, very much for first off answering the survey that brought you here for more information. As we mentioned a moment ago, as Pete was calling our attention to the fact that there were a number of gatherings that have happened, and here we are not yet gathering. We really wanted to make sure that we weren't compromising people's safety or comfort. And by comfort, I mean more our ease with being together by trying to, we wanted to make sure that we actually had the necessary cleaning supplies, that we had the necessary signage, that we had an opportunity to do what we're doing tonight, to look over the protocols that we've put together for Mass. You guys are most welcome to point out places in the protocols where you think we might be driving too close to the edge. And we can certainly revise things that way, or point out where we're not able to. So we've got signage ordered. We have some sanitizing stuff in. If at the end of the meeting any of you want to offer a suggestion for a disinfectant solution that will not damage wood finishes, we're still trying to cast around for something for the pews. Okay, so I'm not wanting to, a year from now be looking at pews and thinking, okay, they are now COVID pews. We just want to be able to look at them and say, well, they're really clean pews. So, Father Grace, if you would be kind enough to offer a prayer for us.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Good, gracious, and loving God, we thank you for this special time you have given us during this informational session as we prepare to come back and open our churches. We are filled with a sense of joy, but also we are filled with a sense of caution, because there are a lot of uncertainties about the COVID-19 pandemic. But you know it all. There's nothing that goes without your own thought, with your own understanding. We know you'll provide all that we need in order to keep us safe. We thank you for all the members who are here during this meeting. Fill us with the spirit of wisdom, so that all our deliberations may be for your own glory and for the good of our people in our great family of St. Clare's. For you live and reign forever and ever.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Okay, before Verna puts up our job description, which is listing out the protocols, just to give you a sense of what has already happened. A couple of us have gone through both churches and have measured out proper distancing among the, through all of the various pews. In St. Michael's, we've managed to figure out how to mark areas for individuals and how to mark areas in pews that would be suitable for groups of 2 to 4 or so. For the measurement on social distancing, we used an 80-inch measure rather than a 72, figuring that we needed to accommodate not only for the 6-foot distance, but for the width of a human person. So in some cases, we were over generous in our allowance, but again, the highest value as we were doing this was people's safety, and not wanting to have people feel that they were too close. So in St. Joseph's, we figure that when we begin to use it for daily mass or for funerals, that we can safely get 50 people in, seated either as individuals. Maybe if everybody comes as an individual, we probably will fall short of 50. But if it's a mixture of households and individuals, we can fit 50 into St. Joseph's. In St. Michael's, our minimum number would be 50, but we can conceivably get 150 if we have the proper mixture of households and individuals who are coming. We're following directives from the Diocese of Camden, which are in conformity with the executive order. So, we're following both the state directives and the diocesan directives as well. So, excuse me. The one place where it looks like we might be not necessarily in conflict, but where the governor yesterday said 25% capacity or 50, whichever number is smaller. The bishops in New Jersey about 3 weeks ago sent what they had planned to say, which was 25% of the capacity, and received no pushback back. So we're still staying with what the bishops said, which was a directive that came today from them. So we should be able to accommodate most people who are planning to show up. So Verna, let's put up the document, and we'll do a walkthrough. And there we are. So as you may remember from the survey that you filled out, divided things in 3 categories: a crew of outdoor volunteers, a crew of indoor volunteers, and folks to help with cleanup after Mass. So the thought was that we need to, at least initially, be sure that people who are coming back after a 10-week absence or longer are well-oriented, are greeted cheerfully and happily, but also that we help them to maintain social distance even as they're walking from their cars to the church entrance doors. So we're permitted to only designate 2 doors as entrances, and the remaining 4 doors are designated as exit doors. So the entrance doors at St. Michael's will be the ones that lead into the baptistry. So we'll need to have some folks outside to direct people to those doors, to make sure that we don't have people milling and pooling in the gathering space, but rather waiting outside and entering in a way that preserves social distance. So the first thing is to make sure that the doors are securely propped open and that the exit doors are closed and have signs in front of them directing people to the proper entrance doors. In all things, that we greet people in a friendly manner as they arrive and help them to maintain the social distancing on the walkways. We will spray lines using aerosol chalk on the walkways to help people be able to visualize what the proper distance between them is. So if several groups or multiple individuals are approaching the entrance door at the same time, we ask the folks in the outdoor crew to ask some of them to remain outside proper distance, so that we don't have a backlog inside church. The first thing that we are asking people when they go into church is to go to one of 6 stations where they'll receive a packet of hand sanitizer, and be asked to use it. As they're entering church, they do need to wear their face coverings. Gina has ordered some extra face coverings that are available for people who may forget theirs. A few minutes after Mass begins, we can close the entrance doors and then remove anything that was keeping people from entering the exit doors. We just need to move everything away. So if somebody has to bolt out of church for whatever reason, we're not obstructing doors. After Mass, actually during the announcements at the end of Mass, we're asking the people in the outdoor crew to prop open all 4 sets of exit doors. And as people are receiving communion and leaving church, the folks on the pulpit side of the church, because the paths from the doors lead directly to the exit driveway, we need some people just to make sure that the folks who are leaving church are not going to get run over by folks who are using the exit driveway. So from that section, comments or questions?
I have 2 questions.
Yeah, I just have a question.
Yeah.
In reference to the people that are coming, are they going to be signing up to come for a certain Mass? Or do we possibly have to turn people away if we're at the outdoors?
So at the moment, we're not going to do a sign-in system because we're thinking that it would unfairly bias attendance in favor of the younger demographic. And these are pretty much paraphrasing something that Father Dave said at a meeting a couple of hours ago. I have been following colleagues across the country in areas that have already reopened, and they're also at the 25% point, and for the most part, they're reporting that they're only getting about 12% occupancy.
Wow.
So, realizing that the Metro Philadelphia area is unique unto itself as far as its brand of Catholicism, we could be different, but we'll also be able to hear reports about how things went in parishes that are starting to function this weekend. So at the moment, we really just want to be able to welcome everybody, greet them and seat them, and cross our fingers that we will have enough space. But if it looks like that's not a good idea based on other places for this coming weekend, then we definitely have to plan B.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay?
Yep.
Very good. Pete, did you say you had a question?
Yes, are you be opening both churches at the same time, or just St. Michael's first and then St. Joseph?
St. Michael's will be first for weekend masses. Daily Mass will start at St. Joseph's on Thursday and Friday. And Father John will have Mass in Spanish on Tuesday evening. And once we have our next meeting in staff to talk about funerals and baptisms and other things, certainly, St. Joseph's will be open and available for that.
Okay, I also suggest you put exit signs on the outer doors of the church so that people coming up the sidewalk won't come in the side doors.
That's part of the signage that we've ordered. I think Gina and Deacon Kevin are handling signage, and I think they did a really good walk around, and Father Dave joined them, and I think their governing principle was what can possibly go wrong, and order a sign to prevent that from happening. So, but yeah, good point. I think there will be signage outside, designating doors that can't be used, but it's also we want to have people there to shepherd folks in, because I think most people's impulse is going to be, I'm back to church, I can do what we usually do. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did you say St. Joseph's is going to, excuse me, St. Joseph's is going to open Thursday as in tomorrow? Thursday next week?
Next week.
Thursday
Next week.
Okay.
Okay, I think our first official reopening masses are the masses for the weekend. And then we start with weekday masses. One additional thing, and I'll throw it in here because it's an appropriate spot to toss it in. We're adding a Monday evening mass. I believe it's going to be at 5:30 for the benefit of people who might be apprehensive about going to a Sunday mass, but still would like to come to Mass, receive communion at Mass. So in addition to the usual daily Masses, there'll be an additional daily Mass. The decision has not yet been made as to whether it will be in Gibbstown or Swedesboro. That one's still open.
I'm sorry, Steve, just to clarify, what is our first mass that's going to be celebrated?
4:30 on Saturday.
Okay. So the Thursday weekday mass is going to begin when?
I believe the week after that.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
we will be needing some volunteers for weekday masses as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Verna, how about if you move us to the indoor?
Well,
Sorry.
maybe it's going to be, I'm sorry, this is Colleen. Maybe it's going to be on the indoor. Are we taking temperatures at all?
That wasn't in our diocesan directives.
Okay.
So, and we're trying to be really scrupulous about asking people who might be feeling ill, symptomatic, or have a temperature to not show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was discussed, it was considered, but I think Father Dave came down on the side of it wasn't something that the bishops of New Jersey are asking their parishes to do at this time.
Okay.
Okay, if it becomes part of our New Jersey state protocols, then we certainly will do it.
Steve,
Okay. Yes.
this is Mary. So you're saying that this Saturday at 5
No. Next Saturday.
there'll be a 5:30 mass at Gibbstown, correct?
Okay.
Then, or
Mary,
4, yes, go ahead.
I was going to say I think I need to listen to your whole statement and then I'll answer. I started to answer and realized I cut you off.
Okay. Next weekend, not this coming weekend. That's when mass will start for the weekend masses.
Public mass.
Public mass, correct. Public mass. I understand that. Now, Saturday at 5:30,
No.
4:30.
Yes.
And then Sunday at what time?
In English, 11. In Spanish, 9.
Okay, all at St. Michael's.
All at St. Michael's.
Okay, now you're entering at the baptismal font.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have a handicapped mother. Will she be able to exit the same way as we come in? Or she's
You
in
would
a
probably,
wheel-
more than likely, you'll have to choose seating that will allow her to go out the designated exit door.
Yes, but you can enter and exit the main doors with a wheelchair.
We're on grade for pretty much all of the doors except the ones that are next to the pulpit or next to the music ministry area.
Okay.
We are restricted as far as entrance doors are entrance doors, exit doors are exit doors, and we will work out a solution that should work to accommodate your mother.
Okay, I do understand. I do recall that there is that exit door that's on grade right near one of the statues there in the back of So okay, I'm fine with that because the other ones are steps and
Right.
we can't go out
Yeah.
that way. Okay.
Okay.
You answered my questions. I guess as an individual, we have to look at our conscience and feel if we're comfortable, then we attend. If we're not comfortable, then we don't attend.
And if Father Dave were at this meeting, he would be applauding your statement because that's exactly how he wants people to think.
Right, and that goes with anywhere we go.
Yeah.
You have to have your own comfort zone. So, okay, you've answered my question. I'm continuing to listen and
Okay.
we'll do the best we can.
Indeed. All right. Moving on to the indoor experience. Thinking that we need about a dozen volunteers in order to make this happen smoothly and graciously and safely. So, excuse me. When people come in, hopefully we will be able to have them maintain social distance. I've removed pretty much anything that's a piece of furniture from that little hallway in the baptistry so that people should be able to stay a reasonable distance apart. One person can greet people as they walk into the foyer, and direct them to hand sanitizing stations, which are just tables with packets of hand sanitizer on them. There will be 3 stations on one side of the main aisle across the back, and 3 stations on the other side of the main aisle across the back, so that people can do their sanitizing and maintain social distance. There should be one volunteer at the head of each aisle. So the main aisle needs a volunteer, the next aisle over, and finally the aisles next to the wall. And the volunteers will basically just, those volunteers will basically just call folks over and direct them to a volunteer who is further down the aisle. And people will be expected to sit where we ask them to sit. This will be a major challenge for folks who are used to sitting in the same place for a chunk of a century. But in order to be able to maintain the distancing, we're going to have to ask people to sit where we put them. The pews are marked with blue painter's tape. There is a pattern where if we have people sitting in a pew, the next 2 pews are taped off so that no one can sit in them. Excuse me. In the various pews that have people sitting in them, some of them will just have short pieces of tape, maybe about a foot wide. Some will have longer pieces of tape that are maybe 4 or 5 feet wide. That's to signal the volunteers who are doing the seating where they could possibly seat a household as opposed to an individual. So, but if more people come as individuals than as households, it may be necessary to seat individuals in spots that are designated for the groups. There will be no offertory procession, no collection taken up. We'll just put a basket near the hand sanitizing stations for people to leave their envelopes there. Communion will be distributed after the final blessing. So people will come forward, receive, and leave church immediately. The communion procession will be single file. So in the main aisle, the ushers, the inside volunteers will basically cue people to come forward, from one side, then from the other side. There's masking tape already on the floor to help people maintain social distance. And I've measured out a distance that is like two feet or more from the communion minister. Put a marking that's a box of the blue masking tape. That's the target that people who are coming forward to receive communion will need to hit in order to be. I'm aiming to have people be 3 or 4 feet away from the minister. So the minister will need to reach a little bit farther with the host. People will need to extend their hands a little bit farther in order to receive, but we don't necessarily have the same level of possibility for breathing. Those who are distributing Holy Communion will be wearing masks. Those who are receiving communion will be asked to pull their mask down right before they step forward, and then replace their mask after they have put the host in their mouth. Those who are seated in the center sections will pretty much follow their usual pattern up the center aisle and then turn and go down the middle aisle, the one that's between the two seating sections. They will proceed directly out the doors at the end of those aisles to outside. Those who are seated in the side sections along the wall will come forward by way of their usual aisle, which is up against the wall. They'll receive from a minister standing near the doors and just turn and go directly outside by way of the doors that are right there. So, any questions on that?
Steve, I have a question.
Sure.
So you're saying that those seated in the center sections will come forward, lower their mask, receive, and proceed to the customary return aisle. So are you saying they can't receive it in their hand?
No, they must receive it in their hand.
Okay, that's a little bit confusing to me. So I'll receive it in my hand and then move forward and then lower my mask and take it.
No, you'll and thank you for walking us through this. You'll come forward, lower. Let's look at the first bullet.
Right.
Those in the center section will come forward. Okay, lower their mask, receive, and proceed to the customary return aisle. At some point as they're walking out, we want them to replace their mask.
Right, right.
Okay.
But we don't want you to juggle your mask while you're holding the host.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Hey, Steve, I think we need to tell everybody that there is no receiving at all except by in your hand.
I'm sure they'll say that.
And we're hoping that that's the message that they're going to get. That's not the diocese position. But that is Father Dave's position.
Father Dave's, I know that.
So I'm not sure what we can do with that, other than let him handle it as the pastor. But we definitely aren't going to make explicit provision for anything other than people receiving in the hand.
You just got to emphasize it during the Mass.
Oh yeah.
Because
And
somebody's
Father
going
Grace,
to forget, or somebody's going to walk up and want it put in their mouth.
Father Grace is taking notes, and I think if something like that were to happen, I think one of the priests would simply ask the person to wait until the very end. Because the other thing is, those who are distributing communion will have a pedestal with hand sanitizer on it. So even if, as you are placing a host in someone's hand, if you come in contact with their hand, you need to stop distributing, sanitize your hands, and then return to distributing. Okay.
Steve,
Steve, this is Jim Hewlett. Question about when people go into the church.
Mm-hmm.
You said that they're going to be told where to sit. Are we going to tell them to sit on the aisles on the sides first, in the front, then the center, or how's that going to work?
As people are coming in and they're being directed to the hand sanitizer stations, those hand sanitizer stations are spread out along the back aisle at St. Michael's.
Okay.
So we can, and because we will have people in the center aisle to direct people to seats, those who are using the hand sanitizer station nearest that aisle will be directed to there.
Mhm.
The people who are using hand sanitizer stations closer to a middle aisle will be directed to people who are in that aisle to be seated. And then, finally, some will be directed to go to the person who's seating in the aisle along the wall.
Mhm.
My thought is that we probably will start seating from the front to the back,
Mhm.
but there has to be room for some exceptions. Folks who have got mobility issues may need to sit closer to the back. If after walking from the parking lot, they can only walk a little bit further to get a seat. We have to be sensitive to that and find a place for them. But the way I visualize it is we are going to try and have seating through the entire building so that way we aren't having a backlog at any point. There's no jam in the back aisle, no jam in any of the seating aisles. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. And there'll be the collection baskets right there when they
The
come
sanitizer.
by the sanitary.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah, that's really the reason why we need so many people initially inside, is to try and be both gracious to people, but also make sure that there's not a backlog of them, that we get them into their pews and safely distanced.
Okay, so at St. Michael's, how many people do you think we can fit in there safely?
If we get the balance of a certain number of groups of households, as well as a certain number of groups or a certain number of individuals, we could seat 150.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but if we get almost all individuals, that number comes down to under 100.
Okay.
Okay, so we will see what we get.
Steve,
Hello.
this is Mary. Would it be advantageous if someone brought their own, before you went to communion, they would sanitize their own hands with their own hand sanitizer?
They could certainly do that as well.
Okay, and also you have to consider this is the summer months, and so you can't judge the population of how many parishioners you're going to get, because people will be away on the weekends. Because even before COVID-19, you saw the attendance of church lower because everybody's at the shore. They go to the shore for the weekend.
Yep.
So you have to be aware that you can't, you won't be able to judge the Sunday when you have Mass. You're not going to say, well, this is what we're going to get. Hopefully we pray that this doesn't continue and we can get back to some kind of normalcy. But if in the fall we're still this way, then another plan will have to be devised, because
if I believe that we're ready to consider adding more masses if we need to.
Okay, great. All right.
So I mean, this is our experimental schedule.
Absolutely. I understand what you're saying.
So we'll go with it. We'll see what happens. We also, the bishop gave us a rather interesting permission as well, recognizing that many people would like to receive communion, but are very apprehensive about being in church with other people. For those who watch the Mass live streamed, if they're watching the 11 o'clock Mass in English live streamed, If they come to church at 12:30, they'll have the opportunity to walk in, approach the altar, receive communion, and then go home. So there is that piece out there also. Father Grace, your face just popped up on the corner of my screen. Did you want to add something?
I wanted to respond to Mary's question or request. The first weekend is really going to be an experimental for us. And see how many volunteers we have at hand, how many people are in attendance, are we going to add more masses or not? All those will come after the first weekend. A lot of things can change to accommodate each and everyone to meet the needs of all our parishioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Steve, this is Melissa. I have a question. As a parishioner with young children, so 3 that are 10, well, soon to be 11 and under, is the recommendation that it's probably not appropriate to bring them at this point, just because they're not? I'm struggling, and then I would think that others in similar situations would maybe would find benefit in some guidance as to whether this is like an appropriate fit for them at this point in time. Like, should they not try to come the first week because we're still trying to figure it out, or that kind of thing, especially with young children who, like, I have a 3-year-old who doesn't sit still very well.
Yeah, and that the 3-year-old definitely would be the challenging one, because he's probably also not too tolerant of or she of wearing a mask.
Kids don't wear masks.
So we're not necessarily making a recommendation one way or another. We're again relying on your good deliberations. If a family has children that would be able to make it from one end of the mass to the other without having to leave the pew in search of a bathroom, or would be able to wear their masks for as long as everybody else is, then certainly bring them. But if you think that the experience would make them never want to come to church again, you might want to you might want to consider waiting things out for a little bit. And Verna, yes, go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you.
Steve, I have a question.
Okay.
This is Neon. So you said the daily mass, I'm sorry to bring you back to this, but the daily mass starts on Thursday, but what time is the daily mass?
Malin, daily mass okay. It doesn't start on Thursday. Okay. After we have Sunday mass.
Yeah.
And then daily mass schedule begins on Monday.
Okay.
The 22nd.
At 5:30, and that's June 22nd at 5:30. Do we have the option of watching virtual mass on Monday and then coming for communion that day? No. Okay.
We haven't quite gotten to the point of being able to live stream everything that we're doing in church.
Okay.
God willing, maybe a month to 6 weeks from now, we'll be at the point where we can live stream from either church.
Okay.
But we aren't there yet.
Okay. So for the Thursday, whenever it starts, the Thursday and Friday mass daily, what time is that? Is that at 8:30?
That's the usual morning mass. That would be masses in Swedesboro, right? Yes.
So that's at 8:30.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry, I don't attend that mass.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. Father Grace, you look like, no, your frame lit up. Are you getting ready to say something?
I was making a reference to the Thursday Mass. I think it was related when we are talking about St. George's.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we have the weekday Masses as usual from Monday through Friday. Normal on Saturdays during the summer, we don't have it. So when things get clearer, we know Monday through Wednesday is supposed to be in St. Michael's, but we don't know what will happen with the Sunday night Mass. And then Thursday and Fridays will always be in girls, as has always been the case.
Okay.
And the live streaming on Sundays, we are doing Sundays only, not Saturday evening for the beginning.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. The third part of the process would be what happens after Mass, where pretty much any surface that may have been used or touched or breathed upon will need to be cleaned and sanitized. So we will be needing some volunteers for that. We haven't worked out a detailed description in that area yet, mainly because that part of the operation isn't necessarily my part of the operation, and I was the one that worked out the logistics for the first part. So the first couple of parts are pretty well developed, and then the last one is, well, we'll work on it. So, other questions?
Yes, I have one more.
Sure.
All right, since you're starting Masses, what time do you want your volunteers there? We haven't stated that.
Mm-hmm. I would think at least a half an hour before Mass, at least for the first couple of weeks.
I would say at least a half an hour.
Right.
Maybe long, maybe even more, maybe 45 minutes. Because
Well,
you're going to have some people showing up early for Mass.
Okay. What I think we're going to do here, Pete, is to this was mainly an information meeting.
Right. I'm just bringing it up.
No, you're absolutely right. What I was going to say is we're going to take what you guys said at this meeting, what we pretty much already have, and figure out how to connect with those people who, after this meeting, have decided that they will persevere and be volunteers, and there is no stigma attached to your having been at this meeting and say, not yet, or it's nice to know what's going on, but not at all. And then we will reach out and figure out who will be scheduled for which Masses. Next week, I will also be available to scheduling 2 walkthroughs at church. So those who wish can show up with their masks and gloves, and we will walk through the experience and probably raise more questions and more issues.
Steve, I have.
Hello, Mary.
This is Mary again.
Can
I know it's up to the Eucharistic ministers, but will they be able to come to the home and distribute communion for someone who's unable to get to church?
It is part of the plan to do that, but we're going to be working out some very special training. At the moment, if you're an extraordinary minister and you want to bring communion home to somebody in your household, that would be fine. But at the moment, until we do some training with, we have a member of our committee who would have been here this evening, but also had a child whose virtual graduation from Guardian Angels was this evening. She's a nursing instructor at Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital School of Nursing. And she is going to be helping the priests, the deacons, and the extraordinary ministers with modifying their technique to try and minimize the possibility of touch or anything else. And when we get to the point of people bringing communion to the sick and homebound, you know, she will also be working with extraordinary ministers to help them with their proper sanitizing, protecting themselves, and protecting others. So it's definitely on the radar screen. Do you have somebody at home that you wanted to bring communion to?
Well, there is times when my mother, it's not that she doesn't feel well, but her mobility is very, 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 very limited. So it would be too hard for me to get her to church on certain Sundays, especially if it's raining or inclement weather. I'm not taking her out for that, but she's healthy as can be. So why not receive communion? So I have several. I have a relative and I have friends that are extraordinary ministers that are willing to come to the house and give communion. So,
would your mother welcome receiving communion from you?
Yes, she would.
Okay, then why don't you hang on at this meeting at the very end, and you and I will chat before you log off. Okay?
Okay, that's great.
All right, very good. Other questions? Jean, your mouth was moving, but you're muted. You're still muted. Okay. Well, thank you all for being present. I think it was a productive meeting. We will reach out to you, sending you the link to this conversation, and also include the document that we reviewed here. Special thanks to the folks who raised concerns, raised issues, sought clarification. That was very helpful for me. So, Father Grace, would you send us forth with a blessing?
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Glory and praise to Almighty Lord and God, having guided us during this meeting. We thank you for all these volunteers who have showed up, because our opening depends largely on them to help and facilitate our masses and other ceremonies. They left all other activities they could have been involving in their families and communities to come for this important session. Bless them abundantly, keep them healthy, extend a healing touch to all those who are sick within our parish, especially those suffering from the COVID-19 pandemic. Strengthen them and resolve with their different families to always remain strong in faith despite the challenges we face. We know at the end of the day, when all is said and done, it's you alone who will continue to reign, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. Again, many thanks. Feel free to email me if there's something that occurs to you that we need to think about. We have another meeting in the afternoon tomorrow, and after that meeting, we'll work to be back in touch with you. So again, thank you all. Have a blessed evening, and hope to see you in church in a week and a half.
Thanks for all your work.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Night.
Take care, guys.
Good to see you all.
Leave the meeting. I'm gonna leave. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Mary, do you mind others eavesdropping in on
No,
this?
no,
How do we
I,
get out of this mess?
no, I don't. No, I don't.
Okay. So what we need to do is to get you one of those little containers, the little round gold ones with the hinged lid that you would bring up.
Like a pick.
A PICS, exactly.
Right.
Okay.
However, I can't leave her alone.
Ah,
You understand what I'm saying? So I would have to miss mass also.
okay.
So that's why I would need, unless a Eucharistic minister, they would have 2 picks. And I would have a pick. It would be my pick. But I would give it to a Eucharistic minister. They would have, and then they would put the 2 hosts in there, and then I would take on this occasion, because it wouldn't be every occasion. It would just be inclement weather days, and you could always tell if Sundays or Saturday is going to be an inclement day, and it would be my responsibility to, for example, if it was Sunday and it was inclement, and the Eucharistic minister just passed the pick to me from glove to glove from my doorway, then it would be my responsibility to take that pick again, sanitize it, and then return it to the same Eucharistic minister, and then it would stay in her possession or his possession until I would call and say, Steve or Jean, I need, we're not coming to mass this Sunday, Mom. The weather is inclement. It's raining. It's hard for me to get her, in and out the car. Can someone bring us communion? And then I would just stream the mass, and then I would just receive communion.
Do you know whether do you have any neighbors that, or any people in your area who you know are extraordinary ministers?
Yes, I do have a cousin, Rose White, who is an extraordinary minister, and she lives just down the street from me, down the road.
Why don't you talk to Rose, see if she'd be open to doing that. We'll get her the pics, and I like the idea of the pics going from gloved hand to gloved hand at the door.
Right.
And
then Mom, we just have a little prayer, and I give her the communion, and that's it. So she feels connected.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I'll contact Rose, and then we'll just. I know this is all everything is an unknown, and everything is uncertain. But once things get rolling, I'm sure things will move smoothly. But if I get her on board, then she'll know what to expect.
Yeah, and it'll be easy enough. We can just drop a pics in the mail.
Correct.
What part of the parish do you live in?
I live closer to Swedesboro than Gibbstown. And Rose lives outside of Mullica Hill. But well, actually, she lives in East Greenwich. But anyway, she is a parishioner of St. Clair.
She was here at our meeting.
Yeah, she was at the meeting.
She's right here.
Excuse me, Jean?
No, I said she was here, so she heard what you were saying.
Yeah, she does. And I know that she's very comfortable with, because she has given communion to Mom in the past when we couldn't make it.
Okay, well, we will make this happen.
Okay, so I'll get a hold of Rose and just let her know that this is what's going to happen, just for the inclement days.
You know, once you have the pics and have the agreement with Rose, you use it as often as you need to use it.
Right. I understand that. Okay. Well, Steve, thank you. I appreciate your time.
No problem.
I know it wasn't easy because tomorrow you might have people, the same people, not the same people, but you have more people at the meeting tomorrow, and they'll have more questions for you because.
But you know what? Having people raise the questions helps us to be able to focus what we're going to be saying.
Correct,
So
correct.
if you will, this is all a rehearsal for when we have a congregation in front of us.
Absolutely.
And we have to speak to them. So, I mean, you guys were really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for doing that. Okay, well then, I'm going to sign off now. So thank you.
Okay, Mary, take good care. Have a good night.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
My mic's back on.
Okay, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a couple. First of all, when you mentioned gloves, are the Eucharistic ministers wearing gloves to distribute?
No, but the greeters are.
Okay.
The crew that's opening doors, closing doors, moving things in church, touching things. Gina has some disposable gloves, and I'm going to be ordering some white cotton gloves that I will just take and launder between weeks, so that if the comfort of a disposable glove is something that I don't care. I don't like to wear the disposable gloves.
But for communion, you're using your own hands when you're
For
distributing.
communion, you're using your own hands, which is why we're trying to be so scrupulous and careful. Yeah.
And I am interested in the communion visits because I do 3 on Saturdays, and they're all waiting for me to come back. And I told them, I don't know. So you tell me when, you get the instructions and when we're allowed to do it. I call them every week and talk to them, but they all want me to come.
Do they have somebody in their household who would be?
No.
Are people who, these are not people? Are these people who live alone?
There's one that's a group, but none of them would be able to distribute communion. The other ones they live alone. Yes, they live alone. They have relatives that stop in, but they're not Eucharistic ministers, and I don't think they're comfortable doing it. So I would say no.
Because I'm trying to, if there's somebody in the household who would just be willing to say an Our Father with the person, and then say the body of Christ, and give them the hope. I mean, I would not be a stickler for form in this case.
Only one of the households,
Yeah.
maybe they would do it. And there has been a couple times when Father Dave has sent the sisters over to her house.
Yeah.
So she has had something. The other 2 haven't had anything, and they don't have anybody in their house. So whenever you have this nurse and the instructions, I'm interested in it.
Okay.
The other question.
Okay, so she'll be part of the meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'm working. I can't Zoom in.
Nope. I wasn't trying to tempt you or anything. It was just when we scheduled the meetings, I should have scheduled today's meeting for the afternoon and tomorrow's meeting for the evening, so she could have been at both. But because the graduation ceremonies were all pre-recorded, none of us had graduation in our calendars. So I just looked at the calendar and said, oh, well, we'll get the evening one done first, and then we'll do an afternoon one, and then but oh well.
Other questions, I'm assuming there'll be no holy water around for people to bless themselves.
Correct.
And the other question I had, are you actually going to count people as they come in? Like you had the seats marked off, but how are you going to regulate that there's no more than 150 in St. Michael's? Are you counting them?
When we run out of spaces, we run out of spaces.
And then you just tell anybody else that comes go home?
We haven't gotten to that conversation yet. Interestingly, Incarnation has their video on their website. They're basically saying, get here early, get in. When we close the doors, we close the doors. And you can go back to your car, and you can watch live stream on your phone in your car, and then come in after Mass and receive communion.
That's interesting because, you know, obviously there's always people coming late. Always. Every mass, there's people
Yeah.
coming late. And it's like, how do you deal with them and tell them you can't come in? You know, it's like, without hurting feelings and stuff. I don't know.
Well, I mean, this is one of those, we've never done this before. You know, we're writing the playbook as we're going through here. So, you know, none of us wants to turn people away. What we're all hoping for is that folks will exercise prudence and stay home, or exercise prudence, stay home, and then come and just receive communion, or not go to Sunday Mass, but go to a weekday Mass.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, it's just, the experience is going to be almost directly the opposite of what their last experience of Sunday Mass was. I mean, granted, what the priest is doing is going to be the same, but to not be able to see other people in church, you know, greeting them, smiling at them, not being free to hold chats and conversations with folks that you usually see at Mass, you know, the people that I think we're going to see first are the people who are so eager to receive the Eucharist that is the driving force in what's bringing them there. So, you know, I was very honest and forthright. We'll see what other parishes have this weekend, whether any of them ran into problems with there not being enough seating. That's just wrestling with questions like, what do we do if we get too many?
Mhm.
Is one of the things that has kept us really cautious. So,
Okay. Now, just so I get it straight, for the streaming, I think Father Grace was talking about, you're going to stream the Saturday Mass or the
No.
Sunday?
Because we're using a live videographer, we can only afford to have him at Mass, you know, for like a 3-hour period, as opposed to having him come Saturday night and then take down his equipment and then set it back up on Sunday morning. So since we have the Spanish Mass at 9 and the English Mass at 11, those are the two that were live streamed.
You said that opposite before. You said the Spanish Mass was at 11 and English was at 9. And earlier in the meeting, and it was like, oh, we changed this. And the other way around.
No, that's, and it'll be, I mean, thank God this wasn't a whole parish meeting that heard that. But I mean, there'll be notices sent, I mean, emails sent out. Father Dave and Father Grace recorded a video that'll get sent out. We will be doing a lot of base touching.
Okay. I guess my question is, like, normally for me, I watch the Mass on Sunday mornings, but it is a Saturday Mass.
Right.
So that'll be the same for this weekend, but then next weekend, I won't be able to do that.
Right.
I will have to wait until the 11 o'clock time and watch live streaming. Yeah. Right? Okay. Yep. Just like because I have people call me and ask me, well, what are we doing about the Mass? It's like, I don't know. I'll find out and I'll ask somebody and I'll tell you. Okay. That's it. Meeting's over.
Okay. Thanks, Jean.
Thank you.
Okay.
No.